Hi, friends! Grab your popcorn, your drink, and let's listen to today's story. It was sent in by a shaman brother and about his spiritual awakening. Disclaimer: there are some profanity in today's story and meant for mature viewers only. Alright, now let's get right into it. I remember seeing Da as a kid. I was a small, frail boy who never could get big enough because I was always sick. I remember the first time I experienced my spiritual awakening. I was at work and one of my coworkers brought some weed cookies for us to try. I've never tried drugs in my whole life, so I hesitated. But I did eat one of the cookies before lunch. My body started to relax as I felt the high kick in. I went to lunch and never returned. The weed cookie caused everything to feel like slow motion, but all of my senses heightened for that 24 hours. It also caused me to jump in my car for 3 straight hours. My hand swung the keys round and round over my fingers. I sat there in confusion and later found out my guides were trying to use it as a zinning. As I sat in my car and stared into the clouds, a huge staircase formed right in front of me, going up to the clouds. I started walking up the stairs, and as I started approaching the top of the staircase, I noticed a gold figure standing there. The reflection of that gold was so bright that it looked like it could be Ninkokayin or Guanyin. The figure spoke and said, "Zokajai oning." I responded, "I have no helper though. None of my brothers will ever agree to help me." They answered, "Your cousin will be your helper." I nodded my head and agreed. Afterwards, I saw a vision of me riding a horse. Then suddenly, I turned to my side and noticed a black figure staring at me. We were riding side by side along a dirt road that you see in Laos or Thailand. All of a sudden, my horse stopped, and there stood a little girl around 4 to 7 years old. She was wearing ragged Hmong clothes and asked me for help. She told me that a Da was chasing her. Then the Da pops up out of nowhere, and I was holding my keys, which are now serving as a zinning. Well, the key started to jingle and a fight broke between us. I stared down at my right hand as a sword appeared out of thin air. I pulled back the sword and stabbed the spirit and took the girl home. I believed that this was my test, which I passed. As all this was happening, my cousin who was working with me at the time came to check on me, and he called one of my other cousins to come take me home. When my other cousin came, he knocked at my window and said, "Hey, Shumpa, are you okay?" He helped me into his car and drove home. Right before getting home, I called my dad and told him that I felt like I was about to oning. My dad responded, I got home and told my parents what happened while in tears. My parents later discovered that I had eaten a weed cookie and gave me a long lecture to stop doing drugs. They then continued to think that my symptoms were due to drugs, so it took them a while to find me any shaman help. Each and every time since that incident, I would shake when I drank alcohol. My shaking would persist for an hour, and I would end up shaking myself to sleep sometimes. My parents thought that it was the drugs that got into my blood and made me go crazy. I was the first in my family to have these crazy symptoms, so they didn't know what else to think. Each and every time I sat down and shook, I would get up and dance. The energy in my legs felt like I had a rush of unlimited energy. When they finally tired out, I would fall asleep. My dad was also a shaman, but he didn't have to go through what I went through. That's why he thought it was just the drugs and that I didn't really have any cause. A few months passed, and I remember coming home super drunk this one time. My brother was still up playing games, and I sat at the edge of my bed and started shaking. I heard a strange voice whisper telling me, "Bakalunjimo." I thought to myself, am I going crazy? I couldn't take this bullshit anymore, so I threw my blanket over my head. My legs started moving by themselves. Then I started jumping like crazy. 5 minutes later, a weird language started coming out of my mouth. The language sounded like Native Indians or Khan. My brother finally realizes what's going on and runs to my parents' room to wake them up. Again, my parents thought I was just on drugs. From there on, my symptoms escalated. I started singing and talking in unknown languages that sounded gibberish. My mouth would just open and words that I couldn't even understand would come out. My brother thought this was hilarious, so he would record me. After I started going crazy and sing, I stopped drinking. My parents got used to it and just thought I was getting dumber. It made me feel like I was also getting dumber too. My parents ignored my symptoms for 2 more years. Then things got super crazy when I met my wife, who I was just dating at the time. We were long distance, so whenever I go visit, I would rent a hotel or a motel room. Well, this particular time, I was staying at Blackstone or Motel 8 in Fresno, California. That night, we went to watch Logan at the movie theater, and I started sensing things from the movie. When I came back to my room, I could sense something looking at me. It was an eerie, creepy feeling. That feeling you get when a da is watching you. I called home and told my dad that it seems like something is watching me. He just told me to go home. Well, whatever it was triggered my senses, and I couldn't sleep that whole night. So I just went home and stayed up. I later found out that a woman drowned her kid in the room next door to where I was staying. And that was probably what I was feeling. During my shaman journey, I honestly didn't get tired at night. If anything, I had more energy. It felt like I drank a Red Bull drink and had a lot of energy. And a lot of things would run through my mind I can't stop thinking. I would typically stay up and think about life and stuff until 4 a.m., then go to work at 9, come home at 5, and wouldn't get tired until 7 p.m. Then I repeat. This was when I started to get super crazy. I couldn't eat, taste, and sleep for 7 days straight. It even made me lose 10 pounds. Yeah, it felt like I had COVID at the time. I literally lost my taste, my sense of smell, and during this time, my chest started to hurt and I could feel my heart beating at night. I would get hot and cold like a fever. It got so bad that I had a heart failure. My mom took me to the ER and the doctors performed an x-ray on my heart and found nothing. My dad tried to oning and look into it, but my konings wouldn't let him, and they wouldn't tell him. While I was staying at the hospital, which was 3 to 5 hours, just waiting, running tests, and answering questions, I heard a voice telling me to go home and oning. I told my mom what the voice said. I also told my dad about my chest pain and that it would get hot and cold. He told me that I might oning. When I came home from the hospital, my dad called my uncles over. While they helped set up my dad's bench, I went to shower and get ready. My chest was still hurting, but I quickly showered and got on my dad's bench. I sat on the bench, and within 2 minutes of my uncle's or cousin hitting the gong, I started to jump. I was thinking to myself, wow, I'm really doing this. I didn't experience anything though. I shook for 30 seconds, but didn't feel anything. I just felt happy when I was done, like a relief of joy. I didn't see anything my first time jumping because my eyes were open, like there weren't no orbs or anything. And then the second time, I jumped 1 to 3 minutes longer. I tried to keep my eyes open again, and when my eyes were about to close on their own, I already stopped jumping. I felt happy the second time I jumped, but it is still unbelievable that I was just jumping on my own, like not intentionally. It took a whole month of doing oning for my chest pain to slowly go away. And I'll be honest, my shaman journey was a struggle because I didn't go through the same stuff my dad went through, and he was also a shaman. But instead of getting sick, I got crazy. And every time I oning, I would speak a different language that isn't Hmong. And honestly, I feel like there aren't no strength, no pros in being a shaman. You'll just have to overcome it. Sometimes I feel like I am just a crazy ass Hmong kid and I'm losing my mind over this kind of stuff. Even finding my seafood wasn't an easy task. My uncle had to look at the calendar and wait until evening and then light up an incense stick and call all of the shaman names that he knew to see if the egg would hold. He tried that 2 times until the eggs held on and landed on my sister-in-law, who was also a shaman. The first couple of weeks when I finally found my master and finally rising as a shaman, I didn't see anything during my first time jumping. I think it was because my trance was too quick. After my trance got longer though, I did start seeing images that would pop into my head. Every time I open my eyes while I am in trance, the images would still be in my head. Even when I try to shake it off, there will still be an image of me riding a brown horse, and I could see the back of the horse's head go up and down, even when I try to open my eyes through the whole trance. My eyes will, of course, slowly close on their own, as if I was so tired. They just closed. I could hear my cousin or family in the background talking because when I'm in trance, my hearing becomes more clear. I will also see a Native American guy appear in front of me during my trances. All of this, though, it's an image in my head. I will see little kids hiding behind bushes, peeking out at me. I will be riding on my horse on a dirt road like I am in Thailand. I will see dark figures standing on the edge of the road looking at me as I look at them. And I can already just sense that they're thinking, who is this guy? My images will change out of the blue as well. Like, I would be on top of a mountainside, looking at the other side of the mountain, And then I will suddenly be on the top of the mountain, like so high where the clouds or fogs are. And then, of course, my language would change. But I do remember when my seafood came and pulled all my claws down, I felt an overwhelming sense of joy. I was so happy that tears fell down from my eyes. And that was how I became a shaman. To every shaman that is rising, I just want to let you know every shaman experienced different ways to achieve their cause. There really is no advice. Just always think positive. And honestly, some people might think that this is a great gift, but sometimes I think it is a curse. Alright, and that's the end of this story. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I pray that we all continue to be well with great health after listening to today's story. If anyone has any true stories that they would like to share, please message us. Our email is in the bio, and I will see you all in the next one. Thank you.